So, you know, we made it all the way to the end of what I consider to be the old Tekkens. Even if you consider Tekken Tag 1, there's some modernness to that that makes it kind of crazy. We just got through Tekken 3, and how much more do I even need to talk about this game, man? I don't even know how many videos I've made on it. It's definitely up there in my top games of all time. It definitely is also one of the fighting games that made me. We had a big conversational piece about that too. This is a massive game. Right, and as we were talking before, Tekken was a series that always felt like it was like chasing the heels of Virtua Fighter, and to me this was the game that felt like it had really overcome that and built its own identity. How did they do that, right? Number one, how did that even happen? How does Tekken 3 go on to be one of the most successful fighting games of all time? There's a few things. Number one, and I can say for me personally, a huge shakeup of roster and the main character. So they essentially ditched Kazuya and replaced him with Jin as the main character of the game. And Jin is one of the best goddamn protagonists in a fighting game ever.
Round 1. Fight.
Okay, there you go. There's like the easiest shit ever. My God, man. We're already beginning. He's so friggin' cool. He's so friggin' fun. He is the epitome of like taking this franchise to a new and different direction. As a kid, I loved Jin. He was the sickest character ever. Not even to mention the actual brand new blood characters like Eddie Gordo, ultimately being a character archetype that would popularize like capoeira. To a lot of people, Eddie was the reason people even learned that capo exists. So he was just the coolest shit ever. Brian Fury is introduced, a Tekken staple from this point forward. Xiao Yu also introduced. The shakeup of the roster was astronomical in Tekken 3, but really, now is what Tekken is. It's funny, you look at a lot of the characters that we all sort of forget that were in Tekken 2 and Tekken 1 to realize that, man, Ganryu and all these characters, they were actually here like way back in the day. It's just, there's a lot of like B-tier Tekken characters. There's a lot of them. You have to wait till like the tail end of a DLC or a Tekken Tag tournament to show up so you can actually see them. But then you have like the mainstays, and what Tekken 3 kind of did was solidify the mainstays. It sort of made it so that the way these characters are and the way these characters look are now the de facto Tekken characters. And T3 and its shakeup is essentially responsible for that. What the hell? Get that shit out of here. Getting away from just like, goddamn how it looks and all this stuff, I just have to mention immediately, before this, we played these sequentially, right? And I've obviously played these games a lot in Tekken 3 a ton, but I had the direct comparison of feeling the gameplay of Tekken 1 and Tekken 2, and then feeling the gameplay of Tekken 3. It's insane how much better T3 feels just as a video game in general. The buttons, the attacks, the collisions, just everything, the general movement, the sidestepping, like, oh my God, it's actually a 3D fighting game now instead of being like 2D with no sidestepping. Movement, wave dashing, it's all here. Like all of the quintessential things that make Tekken Tekken, they were introduced in Tekken 3. So if you wanted to play a Mishima, play Jin, the way you might play Mishimas later on, yeah, dude, you can just do all that shit with him here. And he's insane. He's easily like one of the best characters in the game, probably up there with like Ogre or something like that. He's ridiculously good in this game. They move away from Virtua Fighter to sort of build their own identity. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, Virtua Fighter was the coolest shit ever. It was like the ultimate 3D fighting game until Tekken 3. And Tekken 3 just dominated.
Ooh. Nice.
Damn it! How the hell did the fucking thing miss?
They don't have keys in this one either, guys.
Oh god. Oh!
It was so sick. The characters, the music, like the visuals, everything about it. It made Virtua Fighter actively uncool. Like no shit. I remember loving VF, and then all of a sudden now it's legit uncool. And it's boring in comparison to what Tekken 3 is. How did they do this? Game feels great. The game also looks amazing. I kept mentioning this, how it's like, oh yeah, Tekken 1 and Tekken 2 like are sort of stilted and rough, but they look good, you know, relatively speaking. But Tekken 3 and its motion capture, which they show right off the bat. They show a mocap sequence at the beginning of the game with a lot of characters and their character models just doing cool stuff. And it looks insane. Like it looks so smooth and clean and crisp. and then you translate that directly to the actual fights themselves. And yeah, man, like landing counters and parries and all these attacks working in the way they do and transitioning from one attack to the next, especially characters like Xiao Yu, it's just so clean. It feels like we jumped a massive console generation. Like, we took a huge leap forward from Tekken 1 and 2 to the point where you completely understand where this franchise changes from this point forward. Get out of here, Grandpa! Ugh. So sick. But it isn't even like, you know, how revolutionary it is. It isn't even the fact that this was one of the best selling games on PlayStation. How did it get to be as popular as it was? Word of mouth was a big deal for Tekken 3 back in the day, and I remembered being inherently excited for this game. Even though I didn't like Tekken 1 or 2 that much, I just remember hearing every outlet just singing this game's praises of just like, oh my god, look at it, man. Just a big part of it that goes forward to sell that. The CG cutscene quality catches your eye so much. The opening CG cutscene, the character endings, like the quality of the visuals on par here are so much better than any other PlayStation game. The quality of the CG is ridiculously high quality in comparison to even what's in theaters at the time. You look at it now and there's some real rough patches, of course. The late 90s, 1997, 1998, nothing looked this good. Yeah, it's had like real footage where they rotoscoped Mokujin over a person. And they still committed to the things that made Tekken popular on consoles. The huge casual appeal, every goddamn character gets an ending. And now they go truly ham to the point where, oh, now we have a truly feature-rich fighting game. This isn't just an arcade game port anymore. No, the console version stands alone. You get Tekken Ball, now one of the most defined elements of Tekken side content there is. Now you also get a Tekken Force mode, which is like a beat-em-up mode, which also goes on to become some of like the most premium Tekken shit you can possibly have. It's like a Tekken Force mode and Tekken Ball, and later on bowling and stuff like that in other games. Holy shit! Came death fisting in like a motherfucker. Holy shit. Off-screen death fist. That doesn't even include time attack, survival, all those other things. You have a truly feature-rich fighting game with a massive roster, and all the characters on the roster look ridiculously good. At the time, other games like Virtua Fighter 3 had been out for almost a couple of years by the time this hit consoles. And yeah, Virtua Fighter 3 is insanely impressive, but it completely lacks the visual and presentation charisma that Tekken has at this point, which makes Virtua Fighter feel kind of less cool in comparison to Tekken, in my opinion. If you had a PlayStation, you had to buy this shit. And yeah, everybody bought it, man.
Stupid.
This is for 40 years of macaroni and cheese.
That's for never saying I'm sorry.
And this is for your mother.
You are, Patrick. Thank you, Tekken 3.
Like every single person that had a PlayStation, there was nobody that did not have Tekken 3. And I have to give Tekken 3 credit. It was like the second game that I started playing competitively, at least, you know, personally. I went out to several tournaments and played Tekken 3 in like game stores and stuff like that when they had tournaments. Before that, I think Killer Instinct was the only game I really played competitively. But for me, like a 12, 13-year-old, like I was wanting to go out and play people at this game. And yeah, luckily enough, I was like, oh, it's that kid is really good with Jin type of stuff. Not even to mention the music. While a lot of people like the arcade version, which does have different music, we played through both of these. The arcade version music is very different. It has a much more like rock vibe, I'd say. Check this out. My only problem with a lot of this music is that it sounds like WCW versus NWO Revenge. Right? Well, like this weird industrial techno shit, whatever the hell's going on with the console version. They have two very different feels to them that compose what makes Tekken 3 so great and have such like an identity. That shit'll bring you back to the fucking 90s right there. That shit'll bring you straight back to the 90s by listening to this shit. And I love that about it, man. It's so It's so good. Jin's theme is so good. I really don't remember a lot of the music in Tekken 1 and 2, even when we were just playing it. But Tekken 3's music is just a quintessential part of this game. For the first few fighting games, it makes me realize how important music is. And even though Street Fighter 2's music was amazing, Killer Instinct made me really think about the music in a fighting game. And I think the one that was after that was probably Tekken 3. It just can't be touched, man. Like, this goes on to set a staple for Tekken games from this point forward, where we'll be analyzing at this interval when we look at future Tekken games. We'll be talking about the music, because the music is so ingrained into Tekken as a franchise now that it can't help be compared from one to the other. And it's like, oh, so which one has the best music? You know, it's like now that is an active conversation to be had. I think Tekken 3 was the game that started that. I think Tekken 3 and the way it sounded and the way it's presented is the reason that is the way it is, and it's just amazing, man. It feels so good to play too. Like, I can't even believe how much fun I'm having just by playing Tekken friggin' 3 in 2023. It's so good. It's a goddamn travesty this game hasn't been re-released in some way. It's a travesty that the only other time Tekken 3 was re-released was in Tekken 5 or the friggin' Bleamcast or something like that. Oh god, it's 2024. Sweet G. Anyway, I can only sing this game its praises so much. And as you go back and you look at all the individual contents available, it is truly one of the greatest video games of all time, and not even fighting games in terms of just being influential, visually captivating for 1998, and still a hell of a lot of fun to play. There's a reason Tekken essentially is defined by this game, because it is easily one of the most defining moments in video game history, much less one of the most defining fighting games of all time. Fucking Tiger.